Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our webinar, Skipping the Marketplace Markup, featuring Privy and WordStream. We're going to give people a few more minutes to join, so just stick with us. We'll begin around 1:03. Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of WordStream and Privy, we would like to thank you for attending our webinar, Skipping the Marketplace Markup. Over the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to share tactics, trends, and true-life examples of capturing more e-commerce sales on your site, where, of course, the margins and customer experience are much better. We'd like to invite you to participate in the conversation by using the question feature in GoToWebinar. Just take a look at the panel to your right, and the question button is sort of near the bottom there. Please submit your questions as they come up, and we will ask the speakers to answer as many as they can at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be emailed to everyone who registered on Friday, April 6th. That's tomorrow. Now to our speakers. Navah Hopkins is a Senior Innovation Strategist and Customer Success Team Lead at WordStream, where she develops and refines e-commerce strategy on AdWords, Bing, and Facebook for hundreds of WordStream customers on a daily basis. Josh Mendelsohn is VP of Marketing at Privy, where he leverages almost 20 years of marketing leadership at great Boston brands like Constant Contact, Salsify, Chadwick Martin Bailey, to help small and medium-sized businesses grow their email lists and drive sales from their websites. Navah will kick us off here today talking about how to bring high-quality users to your site or get them to return, and Josh will follow up with the best ways to capture those purchase conversions when people are browsing through your pages. Navah?
Thank you, Aaron. Control. So perfect. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Really excited to kick you guys off with 5 tricks for fighting shopping cart abandonment through paid search. So before we kind of dive into each of these topics, I thought I'd give a higher-level view of why each of these pieces are really important to the conversation. So we'll dive into a little bit of data around why does shopping cart abandonment exist. We'll discuss CROD ad medium messaging and the importance of ensuring that all messages that you communicate, as well as how you might differentiate some subtleties there, enhance that conversion and retention perspective. The power of mobile, the retargeting or remarketing piece where we're able to actually bring people back in to our funnel. And we'll finish off with the localization of e-commerce, kind of how those offline conversions can sometimes enhance our data. So what makes people abandon their shopping cart? Well, it's sad to say that shopping cart abandonment is on the average in the US at 80%. But what's really interesting is that 66% of online consumers abandon their cart because of problems with the payment process. So not being able to easily check out, maybe credit card problems. And Josh will definitely kind of own that on-site experience. Now, 63% of online consumers said that they were more likely to return to a website that offers live chat. And with the advent of chatbots, with the advent of extensions that specifically have you communicating with the sales team or with customer support, that definitely is substantiated going even further into as we see the rest of 2018 and beyond. And 57% won't recommend a retailer with a bad mobile UI or UX. And let's be honest, if a site is ugly, how likely are we to hand over experience versus a less so? I'm in control. So number 1, I'm an avid gamer and I am an absolute avid Witcher fan. However, I needed a size small, and unfortunately, no matter how much I was, lo and behold, with come from social media, or 85 orders that come from social media sites do come from Facebook. In my shopping box, number 1 and number 2 results were actually from Jinx, and I don't know if you can actually tell, but the text ad, the first text ad, is that same exact site. So they did a really good job of capturing me both from a shopping and search perspective, ensuring that they owned every aspect of their search result page. And let's not forget YouTube. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the idea of TrueView with shopping, where you actually can layer in your shopping feed into YouTube placement. So this was an amazing contextual placement of a Witcher-themed YouTube video with that Witcher-themed product. And even Bing had me. And it is worth noting that Bing actually has, to some degree, even more powerful shopping tools than Google does. So I definitely encourage you to think about Bing as you're thinking about that e-commerce conversation. So I wanted to also walk you through not just the experience, but also some metrics. And this is based off of 550 WordStream accounts that have at least one shopping campaign. So as we can see, Search is really good at the click-through rate. Search is really good at being in that right spot and engaging folks because they tend to be mid to low funnel, and they may even be part of a remarketing campaign. But when it comes to the actual conversions, when it comes to actually getting someone to engage, it's human nature that we like images, so the conversions actually fall to the shopping. And on the cost per acquisition conversation, it's no contest. So whether we're looking at computers, whether we're looking at smartphones, whether we're looking at tablets, that cost per acquisition is consistently beating out search. So let's talk about what went right with Jinx and the Witcher hoodie. So there was a consistent experience. Return visitors are up to 6 times more likely to convert, but only if they're sure in the right spot. And it is worth noting that shopping over search really can help you have that exact right spot. The contextual placement was fantastic. My favorite of all of these experiences was the YouTube one because that really just honed that right in. And the ad followed me around at a reasonable pace of impression. So I didn't mind seeing it everywhere because it wasn't everywhere all the time. It let me breathe and think about it. Now, what went wrong? This title, The Witcher 3 Geralt Armor, is not a keyword-centric title. What I would have loved to see there are the size, whether it was unisex for men or for women, the material it was made out of, the fact that it's actually a hoodie as opposed to just armor, because there are actually sets of armor that you can buy online. And another thing I didn't quite like is that the price stayed the same with no promo to get me to buy. Even had they have included a promo of free shipping or a slight decrease in the price, that could have been a really powerful way to get me to come back, even if it wasn't quite the right size. Another missed opportunity was the opportunity to hit me in my Facebook feed. So in terms of engagement, the lion's share of users are going to engage with products and content in the feed over that sidebar. And there was no accounting for why I didn't buy in the first place. So they didn't tell me that they now had small or had other sizes available. So now we're going to switch to owning e-commerce by owning mobile. So the reason I want you to think about mobile is that there are different search result page sizes or SERP sizes by device. And so with mobile, you really do have to be in that #1 spot consistently, whereas with tablet and with desktop, it is actually okay to bow down to position 2 to 3 because you tend to get a lot of the same extensions and preferential treatment even as position 1. It is also worth noting that 70% of online transactions occur on a mobile device. So even if you might be paying a slight premium for that mobile traffic, it is 100% worth it to focus the budget where the transactions are as opposed to where the looky-loos are. I also want to point out that mobile ads do take up a lot of real estate, and one of the most common reasons for that real estate is the price extension, which I'm displaying here. Now, price extensions actually started off on mobile. They now are available for all devices. But what's worth noting is that price extensions enhance the click-through rate of ads and actually would sometimes beat out the headline for the particular placement. And the reason why is that you were able to secure users who had bought into the price that you wanted to sell your products and services at, as opposed to someone who was genuinely interested, kind of like me in that Witcher armor, but you know what? Not quite the right size, not quite the right price. So now, the power of promos and actually solving for the me's of the world that love a good deal. So 80% of shoppers say they use, sorry, I was doing my go-to webinar. So they use more than one promotional media type to make purchase decisions. 40% of shoppers prefer receiving discount programs. A lot of folks do see loyalty programs as market research for the company as opposed to a boon for themselves. And 91% of brand loyal shoppers use. So one way that you can actually get that to certain metrics like percentages off or pricing is actually using that promotion extension. Google and then also Bing and Facebook, you can layer in a little bit of it. It all the ad networks understand that promotions entice folks to act. So taking that little step of thinking of some sort of promotion, even if it's something that's kind of baked into your general customer success and your general desire to make your customers happy, that little promotion can go a long way. So in terms of engagement, the promotion extension actually beat out the former winner in the price extension. So all of these extensions should be there, and that click-through rate should be honored by having all of those extensions, and Google will give you a good number of them. But you really do want to take that action to set the price extension and to set the promotion extension. I also want to talk with you a little bit about display and how display can be layered in both from a coupon perspective and also from a brand affinity and deal perspective. So dynamic product ads are a really powerful way to pull people back into the funnel. They hopefully will include a price. They have the product. They'll include your brand, and they'll have a simple design. Now, the great news is if you have shopping, you have the feed to make these ads run. So the hard part's already been done. Contextual images are incredibly important. So kind of like that YouTube conversation we had earlier where that ad was perfect. Me seeing an ad for Treasure Island or TI Vegas on Business Insider was perfectly contextual for me because I actually was booking a trip to do a marketing conference with Business Insider, perfect context. Now, I had already booked, but it was still useful to see this ad so that they could nurture me into upsells. So that buy one, get one free on show tickets, dining, and drinks. The fact that it's in season and I could start to almost imagine myself there and think about additional things I would do as a Treasure Island customer. Now, that was a great experience. This is not a great experience. So for those of you who do display, you may have either intentionally or accidentally found yourself in something called Search with Display Select, where Google will actually take your text ad and put it into a display spot, which can be sometimes useful, but in a lot of times it's actually not. And the reason for it is that displays, average cost per clicks are much cheaper, but Google's not going to change your bid for display. It's going to keep that same search bid. In addition, from a conversion rate standpoint, the conversions are 100% stronger on search. So when you have a budget that's being asked to do both of those things and reconcile it, it can sometimes cause wasted spend. So it's really important that when you do display, it truly is its own campaign with its own strategic budget and bid. So just to give you guys some ideas, we pulled some numbers for 4,000 accounts. There was no budget over $50 and no budget under $1. And so what we found is that with an average monthly budget of $496, folks were able to achieve 168,550 monthly impressions, which yielded 701 monthly clicks. Why that number is important is there's something called remarketing list for search ads or RLSA. This creates a powerful way for you to market your search and other initiatives by using display's blitzing power to layer that in. So I strongly recommend for those of you that maybe are in industries where your cost per clicks are prohibitively expensive, shopping is 100% a great option for you, but you may want to also think about layering in display, blitz your audience, and then have a highly targeted approach with that RLSA, which we'll dive into in depth right now. So with RLSA, whether it's going to the site or we'll also talk about customer match, grabbing that email, you've been tagged, you put the product in, you've been tagged. So with RLSA, or remarketing list for search ads, membership duration is up to 540 days. This is really important for those of you that do nurture programs, whether it's a lease, whether it's something that you need to buy every couple of months or even 1 to 2 years out. You also can catch folks who have abandoned you before, but maybe you've now enhanced your offering or you have a really exciting deal to offer. And folks that are in the RLSA cohort, are actually one of the most receptive audiences to promos. So it's about focusing in your budget. Now with Customer Match, this is not the people who have been to your site necessarily, but it actually includes all of your other marketing efforts. So a lot of times it can be very easy to think about paid search, paid social in kind of a silo. You really want to think about your entire book of business, all of those emails that you have, and layer that in. So in e-commerce, 100%, you can enter in that email address and pick up that user and offer them maybe a little discount if they do. But definitely think about not just your paid, but also your organic efforts. And it's really important because new customers can be up to 6 times more expensive than a returning customer. So if we're able to nurture our existing customers, get them to either upsell or to buy more, very powerful way to layer in that customer match, which is applied as an audience to search. So we're going to finish off with the localization of e-commerce. And so the reason why I bring this up is because 53% of consumers are willing to share their location to receive more relevant advertising. There's a lot of misconceptions about people and their willingness to share. Folks don't want to live in a world where they're surrounded by bad ads. They want great content. In addition, 62% of consumers share local deals with their friends. If you find a good coffee shop, if you find a great price on a particular shade of lipstick or whatever it might be, you want to share it. So this is what this experience looks like. It combines the carousel element, it combines the product descriptions, it combines the images with the location where you could convert offline. But let's actually see what going through this full search process looks like. So I actually have 2 cats. I love my cats. I will do anything for them. So I was looking for cat trees. And I found that in store with Petco. And there are some pretty phenomenal things going on here. I see that cat tree. I know my cats would love it. I love that limited stock. It's like creates that sense of urgency. The title is perfect. And as I mentioned, really honing in on that I can go in and rush to get it. But there's a couple of things that are a risk. One is the location is actually in New Hampshire. I live in Rhode Island. I work in Boston. There is no way I am going to the Petco in New Hampshire. And then also, if I did want to buy online, there's that step in between me actually landing on that landing page. So there is a chance for me to bounce without actually engaging, which is the biggest risk. But it's okay. Google actually was tracking my movements and saw that I made a purchase. And before we all get creeped out, this is actually a setting you can turn off if you want. But I would actually encourage you to really take a look at your own history and kind of see where are the places that you visited, where are the stores you've gone. Because this is one of those tools that really empowers Google and other ad networks to understand if you have transactional intent that you're a good user or not. Because as Google does shift to more of automation and kind of accounting for all the different signals, user location and engagement offline as well as online is really going to be a big one. So what did we learn? One, we want to keep messaging consistent across content mediums. We want to own shopping by owning mobile. Promos are the lifeblood of shopping, and there should always be at least one in whatever initiative you do. Adding in retargeting through remarketing list for search ads or RLSA and customer match. And we want to bridge that gap between local retail and e-commerce. Thanks. Josh, do you want to take it away?
Great, thanks, Navah. Great stuff. Yeah, so a lot of information to process. I think, as we think about all of the great ways to drive traffic to your site, the thing that so many people forget during this process is what happens once people get there. Navah sort of touched on a couple of these things as we went through, but I'm going to dive a little bit deeper to talk about some low effort, high impact campaigns you can run to sell more on your site once you've gotten that traffic there. So quickly, just to back up for a second, Privy is a company. We work with small and medium-sized businesses to help them rapidly grow their email list, reduce cart abandonment, and drive repeat sales. You can see some of our 250,000 users over here, sort of companies of all size who are integrated with the Shopify's and BigCommerce's and whoever else of the world. So let's think about, Navah talked about all the ways to drive people to your website, but there's actually 4 things we know about people that we need to consider when thinking about what happens on the website, right? So not everyone who visits our website is looking for the exact same thing, right? Each visitor has their own unique set of interests and frankly has followed their own path to get to your website. And as marketers, we all know that we should be creating these more targeted, relevant experiences on our own sites based on all the things that we're reading and what some of the big retailers are doing. But we also know that industry standard conversion rates are generally about 2 to 3%. But let's be smart here. 2% is terrible. We know that in real life, that it's pretty pathetic, right? If you're working a trade show booth and you only get the email addresses of 2 people out of every 100 that come up, you'll get fired. If you're working at a retail store and only engage with 2 people out of every 100 that come in, like there's no way that that's good enough. Yet we accept it online for some reason. And the most common response about getting only that 2% conversion isn't actually to impact conversion. It's to spend more money on driving people to our websites and hoping to maintain those same conversion rates. Or in a lot of cases, we'll just simply shrug it off. But again, that doesn't really solve the problem that we're talking about, which is how do you get more of the people who get to your site to take a desirable action like signing up for a list or making a purchase? So instead, most marketers fall into 3 buckets: the frozen, the one-size-fits-allers, and the optimized, the over-optimized. So the frozen is sort of self-explanatory, right? These are people, those of us who recognize that there's a problem, but frankly don't know what to do, right? They've invested a lot of time and resources in their advertising and their websites, and they just figure, hey, I'll let those assets do the selling for me. The one-size-fits-allers are a little bit further down the continuum, right? Sure, they're overwhelmed by the concept of personalization, but they know they need to do something proactive, right? These are folks who have probably done some research, but if we're in this bucket, we've read too many blog posts about needing sort of a one-to-one strategy for every person who visits our website. And then at the other end, there's the over-optimized, right? This is an interesting group. You see this a lot with new e-commerce businesses who are looking at marketing strictly as a math equation without thinking about the human element. It's simply a formula of X number of people in this niche audience. If I hit them with an ad, X% of those will get to my website and X% will make a purchase. And really, they're losing the art of being a marketer, and they're not combining the art and science. So what's holding us back, right? 3 main things. One is that we've been taught, largely by marketing companies, that this is too hard or too expensive, and that every single piece of the funnel needs to be optimized and personalized along the way. So we've also been taught that 2% is okay, and frankly, 3% is great. So we've all subconsciously taken this good enough approach to website conversion. And that's also partially because we believe that greater success takes time, tools, budget, and expertise that we don't have readily available. But I'm going to tell you something. Optimization is way overrated. Instead, you can focus on a handful of low-effort, high-impact campaigns using email and on-site marketing that can make you a marketing superhero for your organization. So step one is forget about all of your sources. Let's focus on your top 3 to 4 traffic sources. So in Navah's example of the sweatshirt, for example, I know she's probably going to yell at me for calling it just a sweatshirt, but I'm not a gamer. If Google search is driving a lot of traffic, you should definitely have a campaign in place for Google search. Or if there's some sort of Facebook ad or whatever the top 3 or 4 sources are, and here you can see what that looks like in Google Analytics, or within your Privy dashboard. If you're a Privy user, you can see what's driving the most people to your site. And then you're going to want to implement some simple strategies for the beginning of that path to purchase, right? So you can use simple displays for those top sources that drive new visitors towards a purchase or a subscription. So what you see here is a very simple pop-up that greets visitors coming from paid advertisement to, this is called Samui Bags, a really nice customer of ours. So when they reach that site and they're there for the first time and they're on a desktop device, they're going to receive this offer. There's also a mobile version of this, which is formatted a little bit differently. But this is something you can set up in just a couple minutes. And what it does is it helps you deliver a highly relevant experience, right? So you're using this consistent message from, in this case, maybe it's an Instagram ad that's driving people over to your website. You want to have a threaded conversation that connects between your ads and your on-site experience. Sure, you can create a million different landing pages, but in just a couple of minutes, you can create a targeted pop-up that's going to make people know that they're in the right place. You can also do things to recognize how people got there. I have a child, so unfortunately, I'm aware of what Hobby Kids is, but this is a very popular YouTube channel for kids, but oftentimes they'll be viewed by parents, and you can actually create this welcome pop-up by just looking at what the referring URL is. So here, for example, you'd say any traffic coming to my website from YouTube is going to get this specific discount message. And then when you do that, you want to create offers that are meaningful. Navah talked about this a little bit. This example is from the Ellen store, the Ellen Show merch store. They've run a couple of different campaigns that have converted, between 10 and 20% of traffic. The one on the left here is a spin to win campaign. That allows you to enter your email address for a chance at a bunch of different potential discounts, or the more straightforward 10% off your first order, right? And they've tested enough to know that these are the types of things that will drive people to A, enter their email address, and B, make a purchase. And then you want to use autoresponder emails to deliver on your offer and introduce people to your brand. This is actually super important, right? So if you're entering your email address here to get this 10% discount, maybe you're not ready to make a purchase today. You want to give users, your shoppers, a permanent record of what they've signed up for that tells a little bit about your brand, but also gives them access to the offer that they are excited about for future use. So step 3 is really about the middle of the funnel. It's taking advantage of some of the things that we've already covered here, but a whole lot more to help drive people back to your site once you've gotten their email address. So Navah talked a little bit about retargeting ads. Those get even more powerful when you're actually using email addresses to create your targeting lists on Facebook and other places. So you can really do that to remind people about your brand, certainly special promotions, and your products. And then you can use automated email series to drive people back to your site. So for example, this one from Ledbury, people have signed up for this 15% off coupon, and they send automated emails to tell people that it's expiring, and once someone's made a purchase, they're no longer getting the emails. And then once you're driving people back to your site, you want to actually talk to them a little bit differently. So you can take, for example, here, I've already got this person's email address. Maybe I'm targeting based on the UTM source that includes email as a parameter, right? And I can say, okay, I already have their contact information. Now I want to ask them for a review, or I want to drive them to a specific product instead of having them fill out some form on my website. So then step 4 is really about closing the deal. It's implementing simple strategies for the bottom of the funnel, right? I think we all know cart abandonment is a huge issue, right? 70% of carts actually go abandoned. But in many cases, our approach to cart abandonment is kind of too little too late. That's because we're not using things like exit intent triggers that sense when someone is going to leave your site, and we're not using things like cart value targeting, where we can create specific offers aimed at people who either do or don't have products already in their cart, and even what the value of those products are. So here's an example of what you can do. So these pop-ups, these are two different pop-ups that are triggered when someone goes to leave a cart and they leave a website, then they've already added something to their cart. So the one on the left is a more generic 10% off if you sign up for their email list. But the one on the right is actually even more interesting, where they know that you have $75 or more in your cart, and they're offering free shipping to try to close the deal today. And we've seen that using approaches like this can actually help you instantly recover 10% of carts before they leave your website. So the problem with using only email for cart abandonment is that so many carts are actually abandoned before you ever have their email address. So using a cart abandonment technique like what we call these cart saver campaigns can A, help you grow your email list, and B, give you that intermediate step where you're taking a shot at keeping someone on your site if you don't have their email address at all. So a couple examples. This one is pretty cool. They're a company called Project Repat, and what they do is you can send them all your old t-shirts or sweatshirts, and they will turn it into like a really nice quilt for you. They were experiencing a challenge where they were trying to drive people right to it to make a purchase, and what they found is that people needed a little bit more information. So they switched up their approach a little bit and started getting a 12% visitor to email sign-up rate. And then because of that, because they were taking a little bit more of a measured approach, they were able to reduce their abandoned carts by 10%. This next example is Clean Canteen. They're awesome water bottles and things like that. They actually take this to a whole nother level. They use about 40 targeted overlays on their site. And that sounds like a lot, but it's they have a special offer or a product they're promoting based on the behavior of a lot of specific users. So these guys are definitely more towards the over-optimized side, but they've seen a 43% lift in opt-in rates. The next is Masterclass. I don't know if you know them, but basically what Masterclass does is they offer these online classes from experts in their fields. For example, this one is Gordon Ramsay teaching cooking. They do not discount their classes at all. So they actually were able to get a 10% opt-in rate without using a coupon by giving away a sample of a class, right? That way they could then use email to drive people back to actually convert. And then this other one is one of my favorites because it's so simple, right? So this is a company called 4Ocean, or I should call them an organization more than a company. And what they do is they make bracelets and other jewelry using recycled materials from the bottom of the ocean, and they use that revenue to feed the efforts of cleaning up waste at the bottom of the ocean, which is their primary objective. And just using this simple pop-up on the front of their website, they were able to get 10% email conversions and over 100,000 subscribers in just a couple months. So to sum up, forget the endless landing pages, forget the over-personalization, don't worry about perfectly optimizing your copy and design, and forget about those 2% conversion rates. Instead, you should be shooting for 10% or 20% and focus simply on better marketing. And that way, you'll become your company's marketing superhero. And with that, I'll hand it back to Aaron.
Thanks, Josh. It was great. I really like the animation at the end there. I'm definitely guilty of being the over-optimizer. I think you know that about me. So now I'd like to turn it to questions. I see that we have a couple of good questions here in the box. If you have any questions right now, please feel free to use the question feature in your GoToWebinar. You can just ask the questions directly and we'll pass them on to the speakers here. First question is for Navah. Could you talk a little bit more about the remarketing lists for search audiences and how you might bid differently for something like that?
Sure. So remarketing lists for search ads are very simply a list of people that have been to your site and been tagged for either completing an action, not completing an action. You can set those up however you so desire. And within WordStream, you actually can layer those audiences onto your search campaign today. So in terms of how you might bid differently, remarketing lists for search ads fall into one of two buckets. Either a target and observe, in which case you are looking to exclusively target those people, in which case you need a minimum of 1,000 people in your list to run on search, or simply observe, where you can put a bid adjustment, i.e. bidding more or less aggressively on those folks. Where that can be really powerful is on your branded campaigns, or if you know that there is a certain type of product or service that you sell that tends to have a longer sales cycle, that maybe has a need of that higher engagement rate, that they need a little bit more time, really good use case for that remarketing list for search ads.
Thanks, Navah. Next question's for Josh. So we're a small company, meaning not much marketing budget. How would we go about doing the exit banners or customized offers, the types of things that you're talking about?
Sure. So you can actually do a lot of this stuff for free with Privy. So if you want one, just to use exit intent, for example, on a pop-up, you can actually do that on our free plan. And that'll sort of reach everyone who's on your site. I think what gets a little more interesting is on some of our paid plans where you can target people by their source and by what page they're on and all of that. But if you just want to test it out, see if it can help you grow your list and sort of get started, you can set up a free pop-up with just an exit intent trigger and start getting results in just a few minutes.
That's great. Here's a question for both, actually. It's about creative. How often should you switch out creative? 1 month, 1 week, 1 year?
Who do you want to answer first? All right, Josh, I'll go first, and then you can fill in. So with how often we should switch up our copy, we really want to make sure that we honor whatever advertising medium we're in. So for example, for search, you can get away with running the same copy the full 30 days if you wanted, the full couple of months. Whereas with Facebook and display, it's actually very important that maybe every 2 weeks, maybe every 2 to 3 weeks, you swap up the ad copy, because there can actually be content fatigue, where if someone has seen the exact same copy beyond that 2 to 4 week, 2 to 3 week, 2 to 4 week timeline, it can cause issues. That said, it also is really important to honor the auction price of whatever ad medium you're going to go on. So kind of speaking back to that earlier question of if you're a small business, or if the marketing budget just isn't that of maybe the larger retailers or e-commerce providers, consider starting with just Facebook or with just the remarketing list for search ads, and then layer in the additional ones after you've proven success. The worst thing you can do is to try to run them all at once and then kind of stub your toe as you're going. Pick one, get it right, and then graduate.
Josh, same question. How often should you change out your creative for on-site banners?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things to think about. I think, if you're changing up your creative out in the market and you want to create that threaded experience, you'll want to create pop-ups and banners that tie back to that same advertising campaign. So I usually recommend have something that's sort of a base campaign for when people are, may just stumble onto your site. But if you're targeting based on those ads, you want to create that threaded experience. If you're not doing a ton of advertising yet, you may just want to change things out seasonally so that your return visitors, if they happen to see a pop-up again, there's not fatigue with that.
That's great. Here's another question. It's a great one for both. Josh, I wonder if you'd tell us what's a site that we can go to see exit banners done right? Like, maybe one of your customers that's really doing a great job.
There's a lot. The Ellen merch store is one that does a really good job. Another one, the Dude Perfect merch store does a really good job. They're like another YouTube sensation / Nickelodeon show. You can tell I have a son at home. He loves all this stuff. Another great example is this company called Privy, which is pretty funny. They're just doing some creative things with their design. That's obviously it's sort of not the most mature site of all time, but it's certainly safe for work, and they're doing an excellent job. We were just looking at them this morning.
That's great. Navah, is there anyone that comes to mind, like customers that are doing a great job with some of the tactics that you were mentioning?
So I actually have to give a shout out to O'Meara Camping, or I have to give a shout out to O'Meara Camping. So O'Meara Camping is a phenomenal camping and tent provider out in Ireland, and they're really interesting because they actually didn't used to see their site as a selling medium. They saw it as a catalog that people would engage with and then go to the in-site store, and it was actually through that growth conversation and getting them to use some of the strategies that Josh was talking about, but then also just general driving transactional search to the site and honoring the fact that the site can be your best salesperson. So they do a really good job both on desktop and on mobile of ensuring that if you're going to leave, they're going to kind of find out like, hey, can we just follow up with some discounts or things like that. So I'm very proud of O'Meara.
Cool. Well, we are 2 minutes over here. I'd like to thank both of our presenters. Big thank you to Privy, big thank you to WordStream for coming out today and all this great content. As we mentioned up front, this webinar has been recorded. The recording will be sent out to everyone who registered for the webinar tomorrow around midday. So look for that in your inboxes. And of course, follow up with WordStream and Privy on Twitter, on Facebook, and on LinkedIn. And you can see the email addresses of our presenters here today. If you have questions or want to learn more about their products, please feel free to reach out. Thanks for attending, everyone.
Thanks.